The topic we're talking about today is one a lot of men never admit out loud. How to make a woman miss you, even if she doesn't seem interested right now. And before anyone imagines this is about manipulation, it's not. It's about psychology, dignity, emotional balance, and the surprising way human attraction actually works. Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, I'm glad you found this video because I've sat across from countless men in my therapy office who thought they were powerless when a woman pulled away. They believed once she lost interest, the story was over. But it's rarely that simple. Here's the uncomfortable part most people avoid. A woman doesn't start missing you because you chase harder, text more, or try to convince her you're worth staying for. In fact, the more a man tries to force himself back into her emotional world, the deeper she disappears from his. I've watched men exhaust themselves emotionally, thinking effort equals results. But in relationships, especially early ones, the opposite is often true. There have been moments in my work where a client sat across from me, frustrated, confused, telling me she just stopped caring. What he didn't realize was that she didn't stop caring. She stopped feeling something. Attraction is emotional, not logical. People miss what they feel, not what they're told to feel. The real path to making a woman miss you isn't aggressive. It isn't desperate. It's subtle, calm, and rooted in self-respect. When a man shifts the focus back onto himself, his growth, his life, his identity, something changes. Not in her first, but in him. That change is what women notice, even from a distance. That's when missing you becomes possible. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why emotional space, confidence, and a grounded mindset can pull someone toward you in a way begging never will. Stay with me, because we're going deep into real psychology, not games. 1. The power of pulled back energy. There is a moment in almost every man's emotional journey where he has to make a choice. Either he continues pouring himself into someone who no longer sees the value in his presence, or he does something most men are terrified to do: pull his energy back. That may sound simple, but for many men, it's one of the hardest emotional shifts they ever experience. When a woman starts losing interest, every instinct inside a man screams at him to act, to call more, to text more, to explain himself, to prove that he deserves to be chosen. I've had men sit across from me in my office, holding their phone in their hands, waiting for a response that never comes, and the look in their eyes always says the same thing: if I stop trying, she'll forget me. What they don't realize is that pushing harder is the exact reason she's fading away. Pulled back energy is not about ignoring her or being cold. It's about remembering that you existed before she came into your life, and you will exist long after. It means you don't pour your emotional world into someone who stopped opening the door for it. When a man stops chasing, something powerful happens inside him. He begins to breathe again. His posture changes. His mind clears. He returns to himself. And here's what psychology tells us: people only miss what is not available to them. When you are constantly present, constantly responding, constantly offering yourself, there is nothing for her to feel the absence of. The brain does not crave what it never loses. When you step back, even gently, something shifts. There is space for her curiosity to return. There is room for her emotional attention to breathe. You become a choice again, not a background noise. I remember a client who was absolutely convinced that if he backed off, the woman he cared about would move on forever. He pulled his energy back anyway, and in that space, he discovered something surprising. She didn't come running immediately. She didn't suddenly send long paragraphs apologizing. Instead, something more important happened. He felt himself again. He laughed differently. He slept better. He started doing things he stopped doing while trying to impress her. That is the true power of pulling back. It gives you your life back. And ironically, that is often the moment a woman begins to notice you again. Not because you disappeared, but because you stopped clinging. A man who knows how to step back holds more power than a man who never stops reaching. Emotional distance is not a game. It is self-respect in motion. When a woman senses a man has a life that doesn't orbit around her, that's when missing you becomes possible. 2. Why silence speaks louder than words. Silence is a language most men never learn to speak. When a woman pulls away, the average man believes his words will bring her back. He thinks if he just finds the right sentence, the perfect explanation, or the most heartfelt message, something in her will change. But in relationships, silence can communicate far more than paragraphs ever will. I've watched men send message after message trying to solve an emotional problem with logic. They pour feelings out in a text box, hoping she will suddenly feel the weight of what she's losing. The problem is that interest doesn't grow from pressure, attraction doesn't return through persuasion, and a woman does not miss a man who refuses to stop talking long enough for her to feel his absence. Silence is not punishment. It's not manipulation. It's the moment a man learns to protect his emotional space. When you go silent, you are not trying to hurt her. You are choosing not to hurt yourself anymore. You are giving your own heart room to breathe. Silence stops arguments before they begin. It ends emotional begging. It shows maturity. It shows control. It shows restraint. There have been times in therapy where a client looked at me and said, "But if I stay silent, she'll forget me." And I've told them something many had never heard before. No one forgets a man who respects himself. Silence is powerful because it creates contrast. It shifts the emotional dynamic. When you stop speaking, she notices the quiet. When you stop explaining yourself, she begins to wonder what changed. Even if she doesn't say it, the silence becomes a mirror she has to look into. A man's silence becomes loud when he has always been available. It forces her to acknowledge your absence, even if her pride doesn't allow her to admit it out loud. That's the psychology of emotional presence. The human brain pays attention to what disappears. If you are constantly reaching out, constantly checking in, constantly reminding her you exist, her mind has no reason to miss you. Silence creates the space for desire to breathe again. I've seen men rediscover themselves in the quiet. They had been so focused on making her stay that they forgot who they were. The moment they stopped talking, they heard their own thoughts again. They reconnected with ambitions, hobbies, friendships, and confidence. Silence didn't just make her feel something. It made them feel something too. When silence is rooted in dignity, not anger, it becomes emotional strength. It tells the world, I will not chase someone who stopped walking toward me. And here is the truth many men learn too late. A woman cannot miss a man who never steps away. Silence is where she realizes what your presence used to feel like. When your voice disappears, your value grows louder. 3. Rebuilding your identity without her. There is a point every man reaches when he realizes he has been living more for a woman's attention than for his own growth. It happens quietly. You stop going to the gym. You stop focusing on work. You cancel plans with friends. You place your entire emotional world in the hands of a woman who might not even be thinking about you. I've watched men lose themselves piece by piece, not because a woman asked them to, but because they believed that loving her required abandoning themselves. When she pulls away or loses interest, that empty space feels unbearable. Most men try to fill it with pursuit. They assume the only way to feel wanted again is to pull her back into their world. But this is the moment where everything can shift. Instead of chasing her, a man can choose to rebuild himself. What many fail to understand is that attraction is not created through dependence. It's created through individuality. I once spoke with a client who told me he felt like half a person without the woman he cared about. He said she was his motivation, his joy, his reason to wake up. And I asked him something he never expected. When did you stop being your own reason? That question broke him open, because somewhere in the process of trying to be everything to her, he stopped being anything to himself. Rebuilding your identity is not about becoming cold. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about remembering you are a complete person with or without her presence. When a man starts focusing on himself again, life slowly comes back into color. He starts investing in his goals. He pursues passions he forgot he had. He takes care of his body. He becomes someone he respects when he looks in the mirror. Something powerful happens when a man rebuilds his identity. The energy shifts. Instead of chasing validation, he starts generating it. Instead of asking for love, he becomes the kind of man who inspires it. Women feel that difference. Confidence is not loud. It's not flashy. It's the quiet assurance that you don't need someone to complete you because you were already whole. And this is where missing you truly begins, not when you try to force your way back into her world, but when she sees you thriving in your own. When she realizes you stopped waiting for her to decide your value. When she notices you are no longer emotionally dependent on her responses. A man with a strong identity is unforgettable. Not because he demands attention, but because he grows even in silence. When you rebuild yourself, you don't just become someone she might miss. You become someone you're proud to be again. 4. Becoming the source of emotional safety. A woman does not miss a man simply because he was present. She misses the way she felt when he was around. Every relationship I've ever seen that fell apart didn't collapse because of a lack of attraction in the beginning. It fell apart because the emotional connection weakened. People don't stay for the smiling pictures or the good conversations. They stay for safety, consistency, and peace. I once worked with a couple who looked perfect from the outside. Friends envied them. Their social media was full of vacations, dinners, and happy moments. But when they sat in my office, the truth came out. She wasn't leaving him because he was a bad man. She wasn't leaving because he didn't love her. She was leaving because she no longer felt emotionally safe. She felt like every disagreement turned into a battle. Every confession became an argument. Every fear she shared was met with defensiveness. She started withdrawing quietly, not because she stopped loving him, but because her heart no longer felt protected. Men often assume emotional safety means being overly nice or overly available, but that's not it. Emotional safety is when a woman feels she can be herself without punishment. It's when she believes her feelings won't be used against her. It's when she knows that even if the relationship is imperfect, the man she is with is stable, grounded, and emotionally mature. When a man loses that energy, a woman disconnects. She pulls away to protect herself. And when she pulls away, many men panic. They raise their voice. They try harder. They explain more. They think intensity holds a relationship together, but calm is what actually keeps it alive. What changes everything is when a man becomes emotionally safe again, not just for her, but for himself. When he stops reacting and starts understanding. When he listens without rushing to defend himself. When he stops treating vulnerability like a threat and sees it as a doorway into deeper connection. I remember the moment that client finally understood. He told me he had been trying to win every disagreement instead of trying to protect the relationship. That realization changed him. Instead of fighting every feeling she expressed, he started making space for them. Instead of trying to fix her emotions, he learned to sit with them. Slowly, she came back, not because he begged, but because she felt safe again. A woman misses the man who makes her feel emotionally understood. She misses the peace, not the pressure. When a man learns to be calm, grounded, and secure, everything about him becomes harder to replace. Emotional safety is not weakness. It is strength most men never learn to master. And when a woman feels that again, even from a distance, something in her heart remembers you, even if her mind tried to forget. 5. The psychology of scarcity and presence. There is a powerful piece of human psychology that many men never learn. People value what feels scarce, not what feels endlessly available. When a woman knows you will always be there, waiting, calling, texting, hoping, she has no reason to feel your absence. It sounds harsh, but the human mind does not long for what it never loses. It longs for what it can't easily replace. One of the biggest mistakes men make is thinking that constant reassurance will bring her closer. They send messages all day, checking in, asking how she feels, asking if she still cares, reminding her they are loyal. They sit on the phone for hours trying to save something she may not even be fighting for. And the entire time, the man thinks he is showing love. In reality, he is showing fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of being alone. Fear of being forgotten. I've heard men tell a woman things like, "I'll wait for you no matter how long it takes, I can't live without you," or "just tell me what to do so we can fix this." It sounds romantic, but psychologically it pushes her further away. Instead of seeing a strong man, she sees a man whose entire value is tied to her acceptance. That kind of emotional dependence suffocates attraction. Women don't fall for men who beg for space in their life. They fall for men who already have a life. The healthier approach is calm, confident presence. Not anger, not silence meant to punish, just grounded accountability. When a woman pulls away and a man says something like, "I care about you, but I won't force myself into a place I'm not wanted," that sentence carries power. It's honest, respectful, and it shows self-worth. When he says, "I'm here, but I'm not going to chase someone who isn't choosing me," it communicates strength, not fear. There was a client who kept apologizing to a woman who had already decided she wanted space. Every day he asked what he could fix. Every day he tried to earn her back with devotion, and every day she drifted further. The moment he finally told her calmly, "I care about you, but I'm not going to lose myself trying to keep you," everything changed. She didn't come running that day, but for the first time, she saw him as a man again, not a boy asking for permission to matter. Scarcity is not about disappearing. It's about showing that access to you must be earned. Presence is not about chasing. It's about showing you remain steady, confident, and self-respecting even when love gets complicated. When a woman sees that she can't treat you like a backup plan, that's when she begins to realize what she had. That's when missing you becomes real. 6. Showing value through action, not attention. There is a belief many men carry that affection equals attention. They think the more time they give, the more messages they send, and the more they prove they care, the more a woman will appreciate them. But attraction doesn't grow from effort alone. It grows from the kind of life a man builds for himself. I've worked with men who gave every bit of their time to a woman, thinking she would see their loyalty and reward it with love. Instead, she drifted further away, not because he was a bad man, but because his entire world revolved around her. Attention feels good at first, but over time, it loses its weight. When you are always available, always responding, always waiting, you send a silent message. You have nothing else going on. That may not be true, but that is the emotional message she feels. The strongest men I've worked with weren't the loudest, the richest, or the most confident on the outside. They were men with purpose, men with direction, men who had something to wake up for besides a text message. There was a man who came into my office thinking his relationship was ending because he wasn't affectionate enough. He kept trying to fix everything with more communication and more attention. What he didn't realize was that he had stopped being the man she first fell for. In the beginning, he had hobbies, goals, a life that made him magnetic. Months later, he was giving all his energy to proving he cared, and none toward being someone worth missing. Value is not spoken, it is lived. A man who becomes disciplined again is attractive. A man who focuses on his health, his work, his purpose, and his confidence naturally becomes harder to replace. When he invests in himself, people feel the shift. It's not arrogance, it's not distance, it's balance. Women don't miss the man who gave everything up for them. They miss the man who had a life she wanted to be part of. When you show value through action, something changes. You stop needing her validation, and you start living. You stop waiting for her replies, and your world becomes bigger again. You stop trying to convince her you matter, because you're already acting like a man who does. And here's where the psychology becomes clear. When you elevate your life, she sees it. Even if she's silent, even if she pretends not to care. People recognize growth, and growth demands attention. When a man improves himself quietly, consistently, and confidently, it pulls people in. Not because he begged to be chosen, but because he became someone worth choosing. That is how value works. Not through long messages, not through constant attention, but through action. When you build yourself, you become a man who is not just remembered, you are missed. 7. When she realizes she can't replace you. There is a moment that happens quietly, long after the arguing stops and the messages fade. It happens after she thinks she's moved on, after she tells herself she doesn't need you, after she fills her days with distractions. It's the moment she looks around and realizes that the peace, the consistency, the presence you once brought isn't there anymore. That's when missing you truly begins. A woman doesn't miss a man because he stayed available. She misses him because she finally notices what life feels like without him. And I've watched this happen many times in therapy, not only in romantic relationships, but in friendships, marriages, and even situations that ended without anger. At first, everything feels new and exciting for her: freedom, space, relief. But the emotional truth is never in the beginning. It's in what happens after the excitement dies down. There was a client who told me he felt invisible to the woman he loved. She left, convinced she could find better, convinced he was replaceable. For months, he tried to prove he was worth keeping. When he finally stopped chasing and focused on himself again, his world changed. He found his confidence. He reconnected with his purpose. He became stable in ways he hadn't been before. And that's when she reached out, not because he begged, but because she finally felt the absence of the man he had become. When a woman realizes she can't replace you, it's never because of your pain or your pleading. It's because of your growth. She starts comparing the energy you brought to the energy she sees in other people. She notices that other men don't listen the same way. They don't have the same patience. They don't offer the same emotional safety. They don't carry themselves with the same grounded confidence she used to complain about until she didn't have it anymore. And here's something men don't hear enough. You don't become irreplaceable by being perfect. You become irreplaceable by being authentic, by growing, by owning your mistakes without letting them define you. The man who stands back up after heartbreak becomes stronger than the man who fell. What really makes her miss you is the realization that you didn't fall apart without her. She expected you to break. She expected you to wait, but you healed. You improved. You became more. When a woman sees that you became a better man after she left, the memory of you becomes heavier. That's when the comparisons start. That's when she replays conversations in her mind. That's when she wonders if she misjudged you. Not every woman comes back, and the goal is not to make her return. The goal is to become a man whose presence leaves an imprint, a man whose energy, confidence, and growth make him unforgettable. When you become that man, she may not say it out loud, but she will feel it. You weren't just someone she knew. You were someone she'll always remember. At the end of the day, making a woman miss you isn't about tricks, manipulation, or forcing your way back into her life. It's about becoming the kind of man whose presence has weight. When you pull back with dignity, create silence rooted in self-respect, rebuild your identity, protect emotional safety, show value through your actions, and grow into someone stronger than before, something changes. Not just in her, but in you. Whether she comes back or not, you become a man worthy of love, respect, and peace. That's what truly makes you unforgettable.